How to paint your car or truck at home and save money. Work at your own pace on your own time. No paint booth in my case. I just painted it in my back patio. I'm not a painter and it's just a hobby. So safety is always number one priority. This is the final part 3 of this paint project video. I'll be doing a voiceover on this video, focusing on the what I feel is the main important topics of this paint project. Taking out all the several dents on this truck was in videos parts 1 and 2. We're now at the final stages, getting the cab and the bed ready for paint. I'm going to be adding a coat of primer to the areas that I'm working on, and we'd be sanding them down, inspecting them for any waves or any missed bodywork areas. This project required a full gallon of primer. I used TranStar DTM primer, and that's what I'm mixing right now. And it's a 4-to-1 mixing ratio, 4 parts primer and 1 part activator. This 1 gallon of primer costed about $175. However, it is an expensive primer, and where I'm saving money is on the labor doing it myself. I'm using a Husky 60-gallon 220 air compressor and a mid-grade Harbor Freight spray gun. I use the same spray gun for my primer, base coat, and clear coat. However, in between each process, the gun was thoroughly cleaned out. As you can see, the body filler and dolphin glaze areas, priming the cab, the bodywork, check out parts 1 and 2, and it goes into detail on the bodywork. And here I'm spraying the primer. I had my PSI gun pressure at about 28 PSI with a wide fan pattern. Throughout your project, wash your panels, blow them out with the compressed air, hidden areas, as you can see, like this port here on the top bed rail, all that dust and debris that comes out. You don't want to miss any steps when you come to your painting stage, because all that could really contaminate your paint. As we continue, I focused primer on the damaged areas where metal was exposed, where I had my dents. I ended up putting a very fine layer of body filler on this top rail. These fiberglass, it was just wavy. I don't know if they come in different designs or what, but this one was in really bad shape. Had some cracks. Fixed the cracks. So it's just a continuation of part 1. Just cleaning it up. Doing the cab separate to not get overwhelmed in this project. Now that it's ready for paint, prior to the paint process, after the primer, I sanded it down, water sanded it with 600 grit sandpaper, and I sanded all of the inside jambs and the hinge areas that were hard to reach with the sandpaper. I used a green Scotch-Brite, so everything is scuffed and I have a nice, good surface to paint. This base coat is a 1-to-1 mixing ratio, so 1 part paint, 1 part reducer, and I'm using a slow reducer. So I use 5 ounces of paint and 5 ounces of reducer. I mix that and put it into my painting cup. This paint was $300, maybe a few dollars more. However, it's very good paint. I went with a factory white finish, and where I'm saving money is by doing it myself. I bought a gallon of paint. However, I do have leftover paint if any touch-ups are required at a later time. With this spray gun and with this paint, I had better results using a white fan pattern at a 30 psi. Depending on the product and depending on the paint gun, you need to just test your material with your gun you're using and your air pressure to get the flow pattern that you're comfortable with that gives you a nice even spray. Depending on your surroundings and your work location, set up a plan on how you're going to spray where that gun can reach in all of the areas that are going to be needing paint. If I do another big project like this, I think next time I may get the inflatable paint booth, just due to the fact that the overspray, the PSI needed to get a proper spray, the overspray, depending on your weather conditions, that overspray travels and you just don't want to have any problems with neighbors and stuff like that. On painting my base coat, everything had 2 coats of the base coat paint, and it was 15 minutes between coats. When I applied the clear coat, I applied 3 coats on these panels, and my average wait time between coats was 15 minutes. And a lot of this had to do with the weather that we had. And you just got to check with the specifications and the requirements of the product that you're using and follow those recommendations. Now that my cab is painted, I decided to hang the doors, fenders, and hood. If you go to the extent of removing the doors, I strongly recommend these door jacks because it allows one person to do it and it allows the doors to line up perfectly. I needed new door pins, and that was one of the reasons why the doors were removed. So at this point is a good time to take care of all the necessary repairs needed. Now that the cab and the front clip is completed, I can focus on the bed. Over the primered surface, I'm applying a dry guide coat. I'm block sanding it with a DuraBlock long blocks and an adhesive back 220 grit sandpaper. And my sanding on the panels that are accessible for cross hatching, like this panel here, I just go in a cross hatch section and it takes all the waves out and it leaves a real nice flat surface. After that guide coat is sanded, as you can see here, I had to apply dolphin glaze to make some corrections and to fix some areas that needed attention. And just taking the extra time at this point, it's just going to make the project look a lot better. One thing I did want to mention on applying this base coat, between coats, if you have any debris or a bug or something lands on it with this particular solid white finish, it's able to be corrected. You can lightly sand it with like an 800, remove the bug or debris if something does land on it, and then you can shoot clear over it or shoot your second coat of base coat. If you're dealing with a metallic base coat, then you have to be very careful, because if you touch that with any sandpaper or anything to try to do a correction, the metallics can move on you, and it would just come out with a bad paint job. When I apply my clear coat, if any corrections need to be made, I just make the corrections after the clear coat has completely dried, and I either have to re-clear it or do a color sanding and cut and buff. Three wet coats, a little bit too heavy. Just hope it dries so it doesn't sag. When the paint was thoroughly dried, I applied a Raptor bed liner in the bed liner area to clean it up. There's a little piece of trash right there. Little piece of trash. Hopefully that'll buff out with the... If you see a little dust or so-called trash in the clear coat, it's not a deal breaker. Let the paint and clear coat dry, and then sand it with 1000 grit, lightly sand it, and a 1500 grit sandpaper, and then use a wool buffing pad with some compound, and that'll buff out. Painting the rims and some miscellaneous parts is just a repetitious part of the painting process with the primer, base coat, and clear coat stages. My clear coat I used was a very good brand clear coat. It was close to $300 for a little more than a gallon with the activator. To me, that's very expensive. However, then again, I save money by doing it myself. But at least I know I was able to use some very good top quality products. This mixing ratio on this clear coat is 2 to 1. So I used, for example, if I used 8 ounces of clear, then I would use 4 ounces of the activator. One thing I wanted to mention, these mixing cups from the paint store, or I got these from Amazon, those mix the paint to the exact mixing ratio that's recommended from the supplier, and they work very well, and they have a scale on the cup itself for the different mixing ratios for the products that you're using. Painting these miscellaneous parts like the rims and the front grille, I bought a quart of metallic gunmetal gray, and it was about $100. And I felt it was money well spent because it just makes the overall appearance of the truck look a lot cleaner. Before the wheels go on, I'm going to be painting the visible frame areas with a satin black, and that's just paint I have left over from another project. It's normal to do some paint corrections, like the rims need more clear coat, and some additional car parts need to be painted. So those kinds of things can be expected. Got the tires installed this morning. Came out okay. However, I saw a bubble in the paint, contamination somewhere, somehow, in a couple of areas. So I blocked it all the way down with 320, 400, and then 600. And there was, on the older paint underneath, somewhere in the fiberglass area, bodywork, there was a contaminant there. I just blocked it all the way down. Hopefully it doesn't get a wave. And I used a hard block, and there was a little flaw here. So I'm just gonna mix a tiny bit of primer and very small amount of primer, and just spot it. And then I'm going to let it dry for a couple of hours, mask the entire truck, cover it with plastic, and then I'll hit those areas with base coat and then shoot clear over this entire fender here, not the side panel, just the fender. After doing a repaint on that fender area, which can be expected when you're a beginner, and when you're painting outside. I did spray a coat of Raptor bed liner in the bed area to clean it up. The truck is back on the road again. Looks great. It's ready for a color sand in certain areas and a cut and buff. And thanks for watching. Good luck on your project. Like and subscribe.